Hey everybody, happy Halloween. I know most people are probably going to be out having fun and enjoying themselves, but for those of us who enjoy Netflix chill Halloween, this is for y'all. As many of you guys know, my favorite supernatural creature of all freaking time, witches. They're the best, they're the greatest, they kick everybody else's ass as far as I'm concerned. And initially I wanted to do like a very simple top 6 for witches. Unfortunately, I like way too many witches and like sorceressy type characters, so the list just kept growing. I am going to kind of keep it to a minimum since I know that I went on really long on my top 13 horror movie videos, but I'm just going to just briefly go through the list and talk about who my favorites are and why a little bit, because I want to keep it short, so I'm not going to be too much, but if you ever want to ask me for more in-depth opinions, you know where to find me on Twitter, on Tumblr, and the like. Please like and subscribe, share with anyone that if you enjoyed the video, and of course have a happy and safe Halloween and Samhain. And if you have any black cats or animals, it's best to keep them indoors today because people tend to be very, very dumb, especially with black cats on Halloween, so just be careful, guys. Here we go. I separated by television, by movie, by anime, and then literature and comics. So for television, my top 6 TV witches. Number 6 is Endora from Bewitched, just because she's sort of the head bitch in charge of witches. I did not grow up watching Bewitched in that way, but I would watch the reruns of that and I Dream of Jeannie when I was a kid, and I loved any episode that Endora was in. She was just so fabulous. Just her whole design of this kind of like matriarchal witch, and I just loved how unabashed she was at being so empowered and being kind of disappointed in Samantha for wanting to constantly depower herself. Like, it was very much sort of like a first wave suffragette talking to, like, you know, like the 50s housewife, you know, why do you want to not be powerful? Why are you going to be with this mortal who can't do shit for you? She's just keeping it real. So I've always loved Endora, and I just love her whole essence. Number 5 is Bonnie Bennett from the Vampire Diaries series. Bonnie is a very complicated character. She's probably one of the best characters on the Vampire Diaries. However, she's always been underwritten. But despite that, I feel like she has this really amazing power. She has a great history to where her magic comes from. And even though they often use her for a plot box, she is extremely powerful. I mean, she's been making spells that have really determined the fates of whole seasons sometimes. And I just feel like her power is limited not because she's not strong enough, but because the narrative doesn't often know what to do with her. And being, you know, character of color on the CW, that of course damns you for all eternity. But despite that, I think that Bonnie is one of my favorite modern witch characters on television. And there's not really a lot of competition, but still. Number 4 is Prue, Piper, and Paige Halliwell from Charmed. I grew up with Charmed. I love Charmed. Initially, when I was growing up, the seasons that aired the most were seasons 4 through 7. So I only really knew Paige. I never really knew Prue. But when I went back and I watched the series from the beginning, I fell in love with Prue. Prue is one of my favorite. I know people think that she's too bossy and too mean and too blah, blah, blah. I think Prue's amazing. I think that she's an older sister trying to, like, keep everything together and structured. And I get that, and I love that about her character. I also love Piper because I think she has the best power. And Paige, I think, like, her attitude about how she wants to save people and her being adopted and coming from a different sort of family dynamic and it being harder for her to integrate herself into the Charmed ones is interesting. So I really appreciate all those things about that character as well. And I think that if I could have my perfect, you know, power of 3, it would be them. I hate Phoebe. I discussed this in a video before about how she's on my list of my most hated characters. So if Phoebe can just be gone and they can just keep the other girls there, I will be super happy about that. Number 3 is Regina Mills from Once Upon a Time. I know Once Upon a Time is one of my, like, hate watch shows, but I've always loved Regina despite how she's written sometimes is very poorly. I think that she is just such a fun character to watch, and I think that 90% of it is Lana Parrilla. Lana Parrilla can just emote all of these things on a character that really should not be allowed to feel anything like grief or sadness or sorrow considering all that she's done, but Lana Parrilla just sells it every single fucking time, and she's just she's fantastic, and I don't know how you couldn't watch that character not feel even a little bit of something, even if it is hate. And she's extremely powerful, but just like Bonnie, because she's not the hero, not the lead, in that sense, she can't always be as powerful as she should be, but when she does get to show off, she's just amazing, and I have loved watching her journey, even though it's been very messy at times. It's been a journey that I've really, really enjoyed getting to see. Number 2 is Marie Laveau from American Horror Story Coven. Even though I ended up really disliking Coven as a season, I loved Marie Laveau. I don't think they did the character justice to her historical tradition, but I do think that they managed to do a decent homage, mainly because Angela Bassett was there. And even though the racial issue was handled very poorly because it's Ryan Murphy and he does not know what he's talking about, they still managed to create a very great dynamic between her and Fiona's character, and eventually they both get to be like, what's the chaotic good in their own way, and I just enjoyed seeing that character who didn't really give a shit about white feelings, who wasn't a white savior character, not a magical negress. Those were just really fun things to see in a witch character, because I've been so used to seeing Bonnie being shit on by the narrative. To see Marie Laveau be empowered for most of her arc was just a really big deal for me, because there's not a lot of really like prominent black witches in media that don't just get killed off right at the get-go. And then number 1 is Willow from Buffy, the Vampire Slayer. I debated if I wanted to put Willow this high on the list, but I have to say that besides the witches on Charmed, the main witch when I was growing up was Willow. And rewatching the series, as I've been doing recently, Willow is just so powerful and so capable. And even though her dark arc is sort of painful to watch because of how it's constructed, the immensity of her power cannot be denied, and just how brilliant she is at magic, and what magic meant for her as a character, finding herself, finding her sexual orientation. All those things are very important with Willow's character. And so when I thought about who should be number 1 when I was coming up with these 6, Willow was like the obvious answer, even though there were other characters I may enjoy it more or less as I go about. But when I think of like the top witch of our generation, it's definitely Willow. So that's it for television. Next are movies. So number 6 for movies is Maleficent from Sleeping Beauty. I went back and forth about putting any Disney characters on this list, but at the same time, I think that Maleficent is probably one of the most dynamic magic users we see. I think everyone who's seen Sleeping Beauty, whether you like the movie or not, you come out with an appreciation for Maleficent because she's so powerful. And I think even though the movie, a lot of people don't like it, I personally enjoy it for what it is. She's great in that as well. And then in Once Upon a Time, they did a really good job of handling Maleficent for the most part. I just think she's one of those characters who is just so dynamic and so powerful that you can't help but be drawn to her. I think of that scene when all of her minions are talking to her about how they've looked in every cradle for like 16 years. She's like, oh, you've been looking for a baby this whole time, you fucking morons, Just everything about how her voice is, how her character design is, and when she finally transforms to that dragon, she's like, all the powers of hell! It's just like, yes, bitch, handle it. Maleficent was just, I had to put her on here. And then number 5 is another Disney character. It's Ursula from The Little Mermaid. And I picked Ursula because I just like Ursula. I don't know if there's a better reason for it besides I just think that she's a fun, engaging character. I think that she makes A Little Mermaid a stronger film by just being there and being so dynamic and so vivacious. And we don't really get to see that a lot with characters like Ursula, so it was just really refreshing to see that. And so I just have always enjoyed Ursula, and I think that her powers, and just when you first meet her slowly and she's like wasted away into nothing, and then you see her, the giant, Leviathan creature that she lives inside. Everything about her is magnanimous, and I just enjoy that about her so much. Number 4 on this list is Winnie, Mary, and Sarah Sanderson from Hocus Pocus. I don't know why so many of these ended up being like kiddie movies, but I just thought that these are like the witches of my childhood from when I was growing up. I always watched Hocus Pocus every year. You have to watch Hocus Pocus, and they, despite being campy and not super terrifying. They have this great charisma about them. You know, they're trying to steal all the lives of the children of Salem so that they can be young and beautiful forever. They're full-on Satan worshipping witches, and they're funny. I mean, they're the best part of that movie, and you doubt their abilities, but when they show them, you just kind of feel like, oh shit, like, these would have been very terrifying when you were, like, much younger. But I just think that everything about them is just very appealing, and it draws you in. Like, you can't help but enjoy watching these amazing, you know, women just be badass. Number 3 on this list is Lamia, Queen Dark. Number three on this list is Lamia, Dark Queen of Witches from Stardust, played by the amazing Michelle Pfeiffer. As soon as I saw this movie, I loved this character. She was just so much fun to watch. You know, there are a lot of times where you have these movies where, like, the main characters are not at all what you care about, but the villain is just, like, everything. That's how I feel about Stardust. Like, I couldn't care about, like, not Ben Barnes. Was it Charlie Cox? Yeah, Daredevil. Daredevil was in that movie, and Claire Danes. I didn't give a shit about them. I cared all about Lamia, and I kind of wanted her to win because she was just really cool. Her power, just how she portrayed it, and how every time she used her power, you would just see her slowly start to age, like when one of her boobs sagged. She was just an amazing, like, presence in that film, and I just thought she was just so powerful, and I just wanted to see her just go to town on everybody. She just brought that to me. I love that character. I love that role. Number 2 is Sarah, Nancy, Bonnie, and Rochelle from The Craft. If you grew up in the 90s, you watched The Craft, and that movie was everything. Like, when I was a teenager, and I was going through my Wiccan phase, that was the movie that I was just like, this is what I want to do. I've played Lives of Feathers Board more times than I care to share, but I love this movie. It's so much fun. The witches in it are just so dynamic, and how their struggles to do with, you know, them being outcasts and outsiders in the society, and, you know, Rochelle with dealing with racism. Like, I never felt bad for the girl that she cursed. I was like, bitch deserved it. And then Bonnie just wanting to not be scarred anymore, to kind of feel normal again, and Nancy wanting to deal with her abuse and destruction. You know, the only one who's kind of like a, you know, milquetoast is Sarah. But even so, just these girls trying to find their strength and their power in this magic to kind of bring some control into their very uncontrollable lives. It was just a very relatable story for me when I was a teenager, and they are just so much fun to watch. And Nancy, just like, when she just goes all evil and just breaks down and wants to just destroy everything, I was like, go girl, because you are just killing it right now. She was amazing. And then number 1 is, of course, the Grand High Witch from The Witches. I love her so much. Every time I just be like, witches of England, you are disgrace. You know, she's just so, this Angelica Houston, who just can play any matriarch or any woman and just bring something to it. I just felt like this character was so amazing, so dynamic, and just so evil, so mean. I mean, they're gonna kill all of these children for no reason, just because they want to kill these kids, and it's just, that character is just so dark and so dynamic, and I love how in the movie she just looks like this very sophisticated businesswoman, and then she just takes off her wig and her gloves, and she's just this monster. And I don't think there's any, like, even though I love Lamia and the Craft Witches, I don't think there's any witch that I remember having such an impact in my life of just being terrified of the way the Grand High Witch was in The Witches. She's just beyond words. And now we are off to anime. And number 6, this was kind of hard. I didn't know which character I was going to pick from this franchise, but I picked Queen Beryl from Sailor Moon just because, one, she is technically a witch, and I'm picking her kind of half for the anime, half for the manga. I think her story is very interesting about how she was trying to seek out, you know, this love, and she got corrupted by those powers, and she ended up becoming a weapon, and becoming part of this larger entity is a way of gaining power. I like stories like that, and I just feel like Queen Beryl herself, like, even though I'd say the Black Moon villains are probably my favorite, Queen Beryl is just, like, her character design is just so elegant and so interesting to watch. Like, her red hair, her long nails, her, you know, her dress, everything about her is just very, you know, it draws you in, and you can kind of, like, even if she doesn't get to do much, you kind of feel power radiating from her from just her design. So I've always just, like, I was like, you're going on this list. excuse me. I was like, you're going on this list. You are, like, the witch. Like, everything about her screams witch in the perfect way. Number 5 is Madoka, from Madoka Magica. I know technically they become witches if they fall, but I kind of think of them as just being witches on the whole. I mean, magical girls kind of are witches in their own sort of way. But Madoka, I put her on this list because she kind of encompasses what I think the perfect good witch is. It's someone who wants to protect girls. You know, someone who wants to protect young women and let them follow their path and follow their dreams. I think it kind of taps into sort of the goodness of the witch archetype, that the witch is someone in that positive lane who inspires women to have power and to seek out their own path and give them the ability to find that way in life when there are so few options. And I think especially when you have QB kind of being the devil that they kind of made that contract with, it kind of makes that illusion as well. You know, they're making these contracts with the devil, and that's usually what, you know, witches would do. They thought in the medieval times, like, you made a contract with the devil, and that's how you got your powers. And so those parallels make Madoka kind of like the perfect example of a good witch in an anime, you know. So I put her on this list because of that. Number 4 is Sakura, and from Cardcaptor Sakura, and where do I begin? I think the thing I love most about Sakura is that her character arc goes as someone who uses someone else's power to eventually growing and having her own power. She becomes the master of her own magic. She goes beyond Cloud. You know, it's a great story about a girl who comes into her own magic and becomes, through her abilities, her own magical force. She takes control of her life. It's very much a coming-of-age story in that way, but I think that's what makes it so powerful and why I just love that idea. I loved seeing her when she was, like, recapturing the Cloud cards and her name was on it, and they became with her design. She came into her own magic, and that was just such a fun story to watch. Number 3 is Kiki from Kiki's Delivery Service, one of my favorite movies of all time. I love the idea of, like, witches going out and having to find their own place in the world and go to different towns, and, you know, she just becomes like a delivery person with her little thing. It's such a sweet, simple story, but what it talks about adolescence and growing up and finding your own place in the world it's so meaningful, and I just think nothing will ever make my heart jump the way it did when, you know, Kiki goes on that broom and she just says fly and you see her go up. Like, I've done that in my room when I was a kid so many times. It's like, one day I'm just going to be able to fly and you guys can all suck it. But I love Kiki and Kiki's Delivery Service. I recommend that film to anyone. Like, that movie is just, like, perfect to me. Number 2 is Anthy from Revolutionary Girl Utena. Anthy is such an amazing character, and it's an interesting deconstruction of the witch idea, because I don't want to spoil the anime for you, because I think the anime is something worth watching, like, in its essence, to really get it. But I will say is that what is interesting about Anthy as the witch character is that the title of witch is not one that she deserves, but she inherits because she has to be the scapegoat. I think a lot of times throughout history, witches have been the turn that you give to a woman who doesn't do things the way, like the wrong religion, too independent, you know, too headstrong, too this, too that. If you were not the traditional kind of woman, you could be labeled as a witch. And I think Anthy sort of encompasses that idea in her character construction. And I think that you should think about that when you watch the anime again. I would highly recommend it. But yeah, I'm not going to go too much into it because I don't want to spoil it. But yes, Anthy is one of the amazing witches of anime, especially because her powers are so passive you don't even see when they're working, and that makes it all the better when you rewatch, when you realize, oh shit, how powerful this woman really is. And then number 1, Lena Inverse from Slayers. I mean, from the moment I watched Slayers, I was like, this girl is awesome. I love Lena. She's amoral. She doesn't give a shit about people, really. She just gives a shit about, you know, making money, getting food, trying to be the most powerful witch of all time. She's just so reckless, and I love that, because usually you have characters who have to be very respectful and good and pure, and not Lena. She's just doing her shit, trying to go through her life to make money. She'll destroy entire towns, you know. She's just a great chaotic good, and I love that about her. I love that sort of character archetype. I love that she's not just this regular pure anime princess. She's just her own person doing her own thing and just using her magic for her own personal gain. And I think so many times the moral's like, you're not supposed to use magic for this, but it's like, sometimes you just wanna F people up. And I'm just like, you go, girl. You go. Alright. Finally, literature and comics. Number 6 is Bellatrix Lestrange. I know I should have put Hermione on here, but, like, I love Hermione. She's one of my favorite characters of all time. But she's not my favorite witch of all time. I love Bellatrix Lestrange because I love evil witches, and I love evil witches that are done right. Even though she has a whole, love thing with Voldemort, she's not defined just by that. She is probably one of the best, duelists of all time, one of the best magic users. She's completely evil and wicked, and she was like that before she met Voldemort. And she has no tragic backstory. She's just an evil, terrible fucking human being with amazing magical skills. And I'm just like, what more could you want in a great, witch evil character? So that's why she's number 6, because she's evil, she's fabulous, and she's so powerful. And I was so pissed that she got killed by Molly Weasley. I know there are people who are like, it was good because it should have house. No. First of all, I was like, if she's gonna die, she's gonna die by Neville's hands. Otherwise, bullshit. Number 5 is Zatanna from DC Comics. I was kind of like, well, people be like, well, she's not really a witch, she's a magician, whatever. She uses magic, she's a witch. For purposes of this video. Zatanna is just one of my favorite DC characters. I love her outfit. Like, I know it's very fan servicey, but she just looks so awesome. I love it. I love her powers. I love her humor. I love just how cute she is. I know that's kind of like a weird thing to say, like, what do you mean she's cute? But, like, Raven is like the complete opposite. Like, I love her too, but she's very much dark and insular and about, being so in control of her emotions. And Zatanna can have fun. She can put on a show. She has this personality that draws you in. And so often, with witches, it's always like, dark and brooding and grr. But I think because Zatanna's technically a magician, she can have fun and be cute and be endearing in that way. And that's something I've always liked about Zatanna, that she's both a fun, engaging character, but so powerful. Like, so much of what her personality is belies just how strong she is at the same time. Number 4 is Circe from Greek mythology. I mean, come on, it's Circe. Turning men into pigs, daughter of a god. I just always loved this character. When I was a little girl, I would read the Odyssey, and I would just really love hearing about that story about her, turning all the men into pigs. I just really enjoy her character. I don't have much depth to say, but when I made this list, I was like, you're on the top of it, because I've loved Circe since I was a little kid. Number 3 is Morgan Le Fay, from the Merlin stories. Morgan Le Fay, Morgana, whatever you want to call her. If you're wondering why I didn't put the Merlin version, because the Merlin version sucks ass. My favorite version that I've seen of her thus far is probably Camelot's version, even though that was a terrible fucking show. I do think that they got her right, mostly because she was played by the amazing Eva Green. I should have put Vanessa Ives on that TV list. Well, we'll put her in the honorable mentions. I knew there was someone I was missing, but I couldn't think of who. Until just now. But yeah, Morgan Le Fay. I've always enjoyed her since I first heard about her, because I always loved witches. But like, that was interesting, as I got older, I realized that, like, she isn't as bad as she's often put in to be. It's often kind of, you feel like she gets kind of screwed over because she's a woman, and that she's not allowed to, like, do things. Like, a part of the reason why, because she has, like, an affair, and they're like, you can't do that, you're good. But then Guinevere does it too, and that's why Morgana is, like, super shady towards. She really hates Guinevere more than she hates Arthur, which is something you realize when you read certain stories. But I think, despite adaptations really failing her, just the idea that there's this woman who is just so capable of, like, making the most powerful men in the kingdom and, like, tremble with fear is just really just like, yes, go Morgan. And I've always sort of loved that character. And I'm hoping one day she'll get a really, really good adaptation and not some dumb shit like Mist of Avalon, which I hate. I hate Mist of Avalon. Like, don't bring that up to me. I'm not like, man, no. Mist of Avalon is a very bad movie and a very bad book, written by a very fucked up writer. So yeah, I could give a shit about that. But love Morgan Le Fay overall. She great. Great. Number 2 is Frau Tautenkinder from Fables. I love her so much. She's so awesome. I don't want to spoil anything for Fables, but you should read Fables. Like, why aren't you reading Fables? Like, if you're watching Once Upon a Time, you should give that up and just read Fables instead. Like, it'll be better for it, I swear to God. But Frau Tautenkinder is the fairy tale version of the Hansel and Gretel witch, and she's just this old woman, but she's so powerful and so capable, and she's just, you never really understand just how strong she is, and she has so many layers and so many depths, and as you go further in the comic books, you just see how much this world needs her. It's just, she's such an amazing character, and I love, as the story progresses and she gets more to do, you realize that all this time, while she was already powerful and could do so many things, there's so much more she could do, and I love, and it's kind of a side spoiler, but she chooses to look like an old woman. She doesn't have to, but she chooses that because it's the best way to draw in people. Because if you look like a kindly old lady, no one's gonna think that you're an evil person. And I just like, love it. And then number one is it's kind of a weird choice, but again, another Greek mythology character, but Medea. For those of you who probably might not know this one as much as Circe, because she's kind of like commonly taught in Odyssey. So Jason married Medea, and they had a few children together. But then Jason decided that he wanted to get his dick wet by somebody else, so he dipped. And Medea was like, "Oh, that's what's gonna happen now." Well, slits throat everywhere. She killed her 2 children that she had with Jason, and then she flees. So you're like, why, Melina, would you put a person like that on your number 1 list? I remember when I first read the story, and I was just so taken in by her rage, by her anger, by her decision to hurt him in a way that would also pain her. Because these were her children, too. She's a character that I constantly, whenever I read that story, I'm always trying to unlock and understand. She's just, her story is like, you don't know if it's tragic, because like your husband cheated on you, but doesn't mean you should kill people. But at the same time, you empathize with that idea of you're just going to be replaced by somebody else because you no longer are necessary. And so many of these Greek heroes are just such assholes. Theseus, Mr. I'm going to take you away from this island and then dump you on another island. It's alright though, because Arachne got married by Dionysus and now she got, so fuck you very much. But anyway, Medea was a character that when I was reading Greek mythology and learning about Greek mythology, I always wanted to understand her and her pain. And I just felt like there are a lot of witches who are intense because of their power, but she was intense because of her emotion and who she was. And I just feel like she's a witch character that I'm constantly trying to like understand better. Hi, so slight addendum. So I was going through my notes for the race in horror films video, and I just personally felt like it was a little too heavy to sort of just squeeze in right now, and I definitely want to spend a little bit more time with it. So it's not going to be up today. It'll be up tomorrow.